When Star Wars first came out, I was most unimpressed by it. My opinions have changed somewhat over the intervening decades. I couldn't be said to be a fan of Star Wars, but it did have an important influence on my life in one way, which was that it led me to come up with a fairly rigorous definition of science fiction, which is rather surprising and rather different than most people's definitions, which is this. Science fiction is fiction in which the plot depends non-trivially upon the setting. That's probably quite difficult to explain, but you can explain it mainly with reference to Star Wars, which is influenced mainly by pulp and soap opera, and it tells a good story, it's got good special effects, and it uses the medium of film admirably, and all of that stuff. I'm not going to criticise any of that. It's brilliant in its own right. Because I'm not a fan, I've only seen 2 of them. Anyway, Star Wars is not fiction which has a plot that depends on the setting, because Star Wars is about archetypes and mythology and that kind of thing, and it's about knights in shining armour, princesses being rescued, mystical powers, ravening monsters and all that kind of thing, and that could easily be transposed, and it'd be interesting to do it, in fact, into a medieval setting, Merry England setting, or into an ancient Greek setting, or a load of other settings where it would still make sense. And as such, the plot doesn't depend on the setting. However, in a sense, the plot does depend on the setting with Star Wars, because Star Wars is about the timelessness and the universality of the archetypes represented in it. So, in a sense, the fact that it's an anti-technological message, for example, is the way some people say it, I know. And in the sense that it's about somewhere else, a long time ago in a galaxy far away, it actually works really well, because it shows that these things are universal and they could happen in any context. But that's what I mean by non-trivially, because obviously indicating doing something and trying to transpose it into a different setting, into the future or into a galaxy far away a long time ago, is something where the plot does depend on the setting, but it sort of trivially depends on the setting, in the sense that you have to do that in order to make the plot work, but it's about universals and eternal truths, timeless truths. So that's where I got to with Star Wars. Now, as I say, I'm not a fan. I have actually watched 2 Star Wars. I've watched A New Hope and I've watched The Empire Strikes Back. I haven't seen any of the others. I know certain people who are fans of Star Wars will be very happy with having just kept the original trilogy. And in a sense, I've done that. So that's the Star Wars that I'm talking about. What I didn't like about it at the time were things like fairly trivial things in themselves. Sound in space, faster than light travel, homogeneous climates on the planets, humanoid aliens in a galaxy far away, so there's no connection with human beings there. I didn't like the fact you couldn't date it, although I know that's deliberate as well. I didn't like the fact that the Tatooine economy doesn't work. It is space opera, it's also pulp. Now, Doctor Who's pulp as well. Now, just to return to my thing about depending non-trivially on the setting, that means that if, for example, there's this idea that the Germans were able to overthrow the Roman Empire because of the invention of the horseshoe. So that's the introduction of a new piece of technology that enabled the Germans to overthrow the Roman Empire. I don't think that's actually true, but a lot of people do see it in that way. That, if you wrote a story about that, that would be science fiction, even though it's 1500 years ago and set in Europe. And that's the kind of thing that I mean by depending non-trivially upon the setting. It also doesn't have to be in the future, it doesn't have to be on another planet, it doesn't have to be, it can be in the present. I would be interested to play with those sort of things. Anyway, that's it for today. Sorry, I really don't mean to insult anyone who's a fan of Star Wars, because I understand the appeal. If you like this video, please rate, share, comment and subscribe. If you dislike it, please tell me why so I can improve, and I'll see you tomorrow.